Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, STEM Learning, What to Look For in Early Childhood Programming. I'm Angie Shanick, Manager of New Business Development for Demco, and I'll be moderating today's session. Before we start our program, there are a few housekeeping details to cover, and then I'll introduce our speaker and we'll start the presentation. On your screens, you should see a chat box on the right-hand side. If you have a question or are having any type of technical issue, please type something there and we will address it as quickly as possible. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If something comes up that you would like clarification on or want to respond to, please type it into the chat box. We will be monitoring this and compiling comments and questions to address. Should we run short on time to address all of your questions, we do write up answers to everything and post it along with the recorded webcast after the event on ideas.demco.com. Contact information for Susan and myself should be on your screen, and we invite you to email us directly with specific questions we may be able to help you with. For all Twitter fans out there, today's hashtag is hashtag DemcoIdeas. The feed is visible on the side of your screen in the chat box. We are monitoring that feed as well for questions and comments. Now, just for fun, while I'm doing introductions, we're going to pop a poll question on your screen to help us better understand who's online with us today. Today's question is, how much time per day do you spend on science and mathematics? Please take a minute to answer this, and I will share the results before we start our program. Today, we are excited to partner with our sister company, Hatch, located in North Carolina. Hatch is the leading provider of technology that creates personalized learning experiences for young children. Hatch's research basis for product development cites a landmark report titled Eager to Learn, Educating Our Preschoolers. This report highlights that young children are better able to learn than current practices sometimes allow. A high-quality early education experience means including more academic areas such as letters and counting, as well as helping to build traits like inquisitive, persistence, and independence. It is possible to motivate young children to learn concepts on their level by building on their natural eagerness to learn. In a conversation I had with Susan Gunnewick, today's presenter, and my own, though much more limited research on early learning, I have come to understand the value of the integration of literacy, math, and science as a pathway to developing a fundamental basis for the key principles of spatial and algebraic thinking and problem solving that transcends a lifelong learning ecosystem. I am pleased to introduce you to today's presenter, Susan Gunnewick, Vice President of Product Development at Hatch Early Learning. Susan has spent her entire career in early learning. She spent 28 years as a classroom teacher, 5 years as a senior administrator in the Houston Independent School District, and in late 2000, she joined the University of Texas Medical School as assistant professor at the Department of Developmental Pediatrics. During her tenure, Susan co-created an early childhood integrated service model for the state of Texas, which is now state law. She was also developer of early childhood standards for the states of Texas, Florida, and California. Susan retired from her career at the university, and she is now leading product development for Hatch Early Childhood, and she directs content development for all technological hardware. In October 2014, Susan was appointed to serve on the National Council for Teacher Quality located in Washington, D.C. Her role is to inform the quality of higher education courses for pre-service early childhood. Now, before I turn the reins over to Susan, I'm going to share the poll results. It looks like most of you, and that is about 56% of everybody online, spends between 0 and 30 minutes on science and math, followed by 28% who spend between 31 and 60 minutes, 12% 1 to 2 hours, and 4% 2 to 4 hours on science and math on a daily basis. Our hope is that by the end of this session, you will be filled with ideas for incorporating principles of STEM in your early learning environment. Susan, if you're ready, we're now going to put the controls in your capable hands. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I guess I should say to my friends on the West Coast, good morning. It is an honor to be able to speak to you about this topic. I have been looking at this topic ever since it was launched by our President Obama, and I'm thankful that Demco has asked me to share some experiences that I've seen with STEM since it became a part of early childhood. The age group I'm going to be talking about today is children who are 3 to 5 years old. However, if you are in kindergarten or higher up, some of the same principles, I think, could be applicable for these children as well. I am going to touch toddler a little bit towards the end. I saw there was some interest on the register about toddler STEM, so I'm going to address that at the very end. So I'm ready to go, and so we're going to talk about, I'm turning around to my computer. Here's the goal for the webinar based on what I was seeing from you and some things that I've observed nationally. Number one, I'm going to show you exactly what's happening in classrooms in early childhood with science and mathematics on a daily basis. I'm going to talk to you about the STEM, the national focus and interest, because, like I said, it started in K up, and then all of a sudden it became an initiative from the U.S. Department of Ed to come into preschool. I'm going to give you the definition of what is STEM, because there's some confusion sometimes in the field exactly what that is. So I'm going to talk to you about that. And I'm going to share with you some pictures of actual STEM teachers, a teacher working with her children in STEM. So here we go. And I call this the lay of the land, because I'm a researcher, as you heard, and I still continue that quest in everything I do. So we have some good information with some nice federal studies that have been done to give us the lay of the land of what's happening in our country regarding science and mathematics. So the first one I thought was an excellent quote that I think that is actually something that permeates for everybody, and I want to read that for you. Normally I don't like to read, but I think this is so important that I want to read it to you. It says, despite the existence of standards and some curricular support for incorporating science and mathematics, there are very few math and science experiences available in the preschool classroom. Now this is a federal study that was done from NEAR in Rutgers, New Jersey, and the results and findings were released in 2007. Two studies that demonstrate this fact. The first study, and I just did just a summary. Of course, the studies are very long and interesting to read, but this was led by Dr. Rudd, and Dr. Rudd, in 40 hours of classroom observation, observing math and science, there was almost non-existent instruction in math and science. And another study that was done by Starkey and Klein at Berkeley said they observed children in preschool in the United States, across the United States, and they went on to China and observed children in China. And what are they doing? And this is a math study, and they found out that children in China are having a minimum of 30 minutes per day with mathematics. And here in America, in early childhood, the average was about 3 minutes per day, and it was mainly based on the calendar, you know, pointing to the number, what day is before, what day is it afterwards. So all of these all these studies and information got the people thinking about, well, when there is science, we know that in the study that we probably could be thinking about science and math instruction with more minutes per day, but we're looking at those classrooms who do have some elements of science. This is the main kinds of activities that we're seeing in those classrooms. There's a sink and float, where children are working with water, and they take objects. Some of them are very light, some were heavy, and before that they actually drop them, they have to predict if the object is going to sink or if it's going to float. The other one, Another kind of activity has to do with the plant cycle, where children are actually planting a seed in some soil, and they're watching it grow, and sometimes they have some that are not in the sunlight, not with water, and then they have some that get the things that need to help them grow, and there's some comparison going on. Well, why did this seed grow, and why didn't this one? So that's another activity that's being children are experiencing in early childhood. The other one is animals. Children love animals. So there's a lot of identification of animals, naming them, going on to zoo and this sort of thing. Living versus non-living. A lot of activities is around this topic of children having to classify objects into living or non-living, and to kind of think about the characteristics of the things that are living versus those that are non-living. The weather, usually in preschool, and maybe you can align yourself with this, that during circle time, usually in the morning, children are talking about the weather, what kind of clothes did you wear when it was raining, what's the temperature outside, are there clouds in the sky, this sort of thing. So weather is usually a daily activity in preschool. And then the other activity that was noted was that science, children are going on to, that when they're available, are taking field trips related to science, maybe a science museum. I live here in Houston. NASA is right down the road from me. A lot of children go there. So this right here kind of summarizes when science is existing in the classroom, here's what we're seeing. So the question is, so based on these studies that I talked to you about earlier, and based on when people were looking at standards and serving teachers, what are the activities, the President and the U.S. Department of Ed and also our Vice President came up with the idea, well, you know, I think we need to start thinking about STEM in preschool, because our country has always been a leader in space and science for many years. I remember as a young girl, whenever we launched, President Kennedy came and talked about launching a man to the moon. And our country was focused on that initiative, so science and math were very crucial. So we want to stay number one, and the idea would be, well, okay, well, maybe we should start earlier with kids having these experiences and helping teachers and administrators and researchers and all kinds of people think about science in another way. And so in 2009, it's announced that STEM is going to be in pre-kindergarten. Along with that announcement and the development of this plan, the national foundations jumped on board, and I've listed just a few of these. There's many, many more. I could spend lots of slides talking about that. And so this is now a national initiative, and the question is, how can we do better? There's another part of this national focus is our National Early Childhood Conference. The association that many of us belong to now have standards about STEM. If you go on their website, you will see a position statement about it. The National Head Start Frameworks that was revised in 2009 talks about science, the importance of it. Most states have revised their standards to include literacy and mathematics in a stronger way, and also a bigger inclusion of science. The National Council of Mathematics has actually created a position statement about mathematics in preschool. It's been revised. It's new. Please check it out. And the other one is the National Science of Teachers Association. So the message I'm giving here is that you're in the right place today. You're looking at this and thinking about, well, what can I do? What can I do different? Because you are now joining our U.S. Department of Education, all the state standards, all of our associations. So this is really a time for us to thinking about, well, it's spring. What can I do for spring? What kind of excitement and new interest can I bring to my classroom? Or I might be able to share with my teachers if you're an administrator here today. So here's what STEM means. The S stands for science. The T for technology, and I'm going to give you ideas of what this looks like in the classroom. E is for engineering, and M is for mathematics. Now, I've been reading lately that some, and I don't know where it comes from, but I see an A, which is called STEAM, and the A stands for art. So I just want you to be aware that that's something I'm seeing about the last year or so. So before we start looking at what's happening in the classroom, let's look at another researcher. Now, again, at the very bottom, you'll see the citation there. This is an IES study out of the U.S. Department of Education. I mean, if you have a study published at the IES in Washington, D.C., that means it's really the big deal. You got to believe it because it's the best science that can possibly be done. And I think that this information is very important, that developmental research demonstrates preschool children possess content knowledge that roughly maps onto the scientific principle of physics, chemistry, and biology. In other words, the brain is fixed to take in these concepts. And so we have to ensure that we are tapping into this ability, because if we don't, it becomes a missed opportunity. You know, you work very hard every day to ensure that your children are getting the foundation that they need to be ready for kindergarten. I have no doubt about that. And so what we have to understand that now we have to think more strongly about our science and mathematics, because the brain is ready for it. That's what we know from this study and others. And so we have to think about, well, how do we go about actually making that happen? So here we go. I just wanted to talk to you a bit, because I saw that on some of the things you asked about. Well, what about STEM and the Common Core standards? There's no pre-K Common Core standards. There are, of course, some in kindergarten, first grade. I pulled those down, and I'm going to show you that there is that reasoning that we talked about earlier in that slide right before, of scientific thinking, thinking abstractly and quantitatively. So pre-K STEM leads into that thinking process that's so important in kindergarten, first grade in mathematics. And it's not any different when you get into looking at literacy. Children who have STEM experiences in preschool are going to be able to comprehend and be able to be analytical. They're going to be able to look for evidence when they're looking for evidence or evidence is given to them. They're going to value it. And it's also going to help them build strong content knowledge, or another word, background knowledge. So when they start reading and hearing things and having discussions, that they're going to be able to latch on to that file that they developed with an experience that was STEM related, was engineering related, or mathematics, or vocabulary building in a read aloud book. So all of these things are connected. It's not in isolation. And that leads me to this principle that has guided me forever. And you know the importance of this, that helping children to explore and observe and ask the questions that we want them to, and question and predict and integrate their learning, is still vital. And this is Lillian Kess, and I know you've heard of her many, many times. She said this at an interview at a pre-K STEM conference in 2012. It is not teaching things in isolation. It is teaching them in an integrated way. So what I'm going to show you now is how that can be done. Like I said, it's springtime. Let's think about setting up a STEM center in our classroom. Maybe you have a science center now, but I think it would be an interesting idea to come in and set up a STEM center. Have it visible in your classroom so that people know that this spring and before school is out, we're going to focus on STEM. So this is a center sign. I'm going to show you some pictures of a study of gravity. First, I'm going to give you the idea about this, to show you the integrated model. And when studying gravity can be kind of a tricky matter, but in fact, kids really love it. And there's some things that you can do that's very simplistic to do this. So first, I believe there's some really good books that you can read about gravity. There are about 3 or 4 book titles that you can get that are basically important about gravity. And you know what? They're picture related. There's a book just called Gravity that's really cool. It's got pictures of a ball falling, or it's got a picture of an object falling, and the kids are trying to figure out just through the photos what's going to happen to the object that's in the air. And another thing is you can put some of the vocabulary words that are in the book that you read, and you can put them on cards, and you can ask the children to recognize the letters in them. I don't like teaching the drilling cards at all, but I do believe that if you put the word gravity down on a card and ask the kids to touch the G, touch the T, touch the I, that gives them letter recognition, that they're understanding that, oh, this word has these kinds of letters, and I'm able to recognize them. In this particular activity, the teacher asked them to fold airplanes. And she had a sample, and she helped the children take plain paper and fold airplanes. It was a great activity because it also helps with fine motor coordination. Being able to take the paper and fold it and touch the line and push it across to make your airplane. And if you go online, you can see some really good ways to do that on paper. This is what she did. She was able to find this on the internet. There was like 6 or 7 samples. And she picked the one that she thought was best for her. And you can just Google it and just say folding or making paper airplanes. And so everybody has a piece of paper. She's modeling. This is during center time. And the children make their airplane. So once everybody in the classroom has made their airplane by going to the STEM Center, they've had their book read, they've talked about gravity, they've seen the word, they've identified the letters, and now we're going to make the tools that's going to help us to understand gravity. So they make their paper airplane, that's part 1, and I'll talk to you about part 2 in a minute, but the next phase of after paper airplane is asking them to make, to blow bubbles with the stuff that you get at the dollar store for 88 cents. And the last part of this is where they're going to do some things with ramps. So this gravity lesson, which is part of science in STEM, it's got 3 parts to it. It's got folding airplanes, blowing bubbles, and working with ramps. So the thinking processes the children are going to be making here, they're going to be doing some predicting. They're going to do some comparing and contrasting. And then at the end of this, they're going to make some conclusions on chart paper. And they're going to have those conclusions written on chart paper by the teacher, having the children dictate what did they learn from these 3 big chunks here. And then they're going to do some artwork with painting, watercolor with painting with gravity. The common connection that this teacher chose was that she sent a note home to the parents asking them that during bath time, have the children take some paper cups or some bowls or some mugs and pour water in the bath water and talk about, well, what's causing the water to fall down? Why did it stay in the cup? And just give that basic idea that gravity is the force that is causing all of this to go down. Because in the book, the gravity book, it talks about this force that we can't see it. It's indivisible. It's indivisible, but it is something that affects everything we do. So let's see what this looks like. Here's the teacher. Now this is at a STEM Center. You can't see all the children here. She's got five children around the table. You see some crayon and some paper. I'm going to show you what that was in just a minute. What she did here is that she had some objects that she had there. I think it was a rock, a cotton ball, this sort of thing. And these are little tubes that she purchased. And the first thing they do is they predict which one is going to fall the quickest. And there's nothing in the tubes right now. So the children are looking because they have predicted, and like I said, I'll show you the paper that they predict on. And she is modeling for them the actual experiment and talking to them, well, what do you think caused this to go down? And then talks about the word gravity. Then the children themselves, after she's modeled, they start testing out the objects themselves. Then after that, they look at their prediction pages and see if their predictions were on spot, or maybe they needed to, maybe their prediction was incorrect, and maybe they can make conclusions. Well, wonder why the cotton ball didn't fall as fast as the rock. So there's all this discussion going on before, during, and afterwards. Then after she's modeled for them, she allows them to work in the center by themselves, continue to test out all these objects. This is day one. Day two, she puts water in them. And she has them to judge which is going to sink or float. Again, that idea of sink and float, which is going to sink and float. And if it does sink, which one sinks the fastest? So there's comparing going on here. We're just not worried if they sink or float. We're worried about, not worried is not the word, but we're trying to predict which one, if it does sink, which one's going to sink the fastest, because she has them side by side here, just like you see here. They're filled with water to the top, and they're going to actually drop each one at the same time. Get ready, get set, go, drop, and then they're going to be making predictions. Well, why did this fall quicker than this one in the water, and what caused it to be slower? So if you had, like a cotton ball wouldn't drop, but let's say you had a rock and you had another object that would fall down, maybe one would go quicker than the other, and so like a bead. If it was maybe a heavy little bead would go down, wooden bead. Well, why did it go slower than the rock? And so there's all these kinds of discussions and conclusions going on. This is not a one-day event. This particular activity that you see here could go on for 5 days, or almost that, because there's all this testing going on during center time. She has the book there for them to look at the table. The word card is there. And now it's time to look at and see. Here is a little card, a little template card that I put in here. This is for 4 children. And she makes one for each one. This is the one on the ramp. The question is, will it roll down the ramp? So this is the third chunk. I'm going to talk about the bubbles in just a minute. But what happens here, this is a wooden ramp. You don't have to have the sophisticated one. You can just build a ramp with just, stacking one on top of some books and having a hard piece of cardboard go down. And have different objects like you did in the where they're dropping into no water tubes, and then they're dropping into the water tubes. And you can have the children to predict which one is going to roll down the ramp, which one is not going to roll down the ramp, and then the kickoff of this is fast, slow. So here the children, they draw the object on the left side of the template. Then they use a smiley face or an X. The question is, will this roll down the ramp? In the picture you see a marble. So the teacher has a marble, and she asks the children to draw the marble under the Draw It column. And then she says, okay, now do you think this is going to roll down the ramp? And the children put a smiley face for yes or X for no. And then she asks them to total it at the bottom, which is math. They're counting. And then she has them to total. Now this is before they do one thing. And we follow the same procedure with the tubes I talked about before, and have the children at the very end compare how they did on their predictions. And then the idea is that we make conclusions. But I believe that children should be, there should be a question proposed by the teacher, and sometimes the children can come up with a question after they've had an experience. Well, what other kind of questions would you like to think about on our experiment today? So she starts and models the question. If they predict, And if you're and having them to actually write down their prediction or draw it is a great thing, so they can have it, because that's what scientists do. They record their information and then they compare and they judge. And so I really recommend this kind of thing. Now, I have seen some really cool-looking ramps. I've seen teachers who've gone to the dollar store and got those noodles that you swim with in the summertime to keep you up on the water. Well, they have actually cut those, purchased those, and they've cut them down the middle, trimmed the sides, and actually built a ramp with those. Those are really cool. And if you go on Pinterest, I believe, I saw a teacher who had those tubes, those little noodle tubes, and they were just on the windowsill, and they went all the way down to the bottom. And these kids were putting cars down of different size and predicting, and so you can get as elaborate as you want. The last thing I want to talk about this particular integrated study is blowing bubbles. Again, children blowing bubbles. Which one you think, if you blow this bubble, where will it go? Which bubbles will land farther away? Which one will be closest to you? And predicting about, well, what caused those bubbles to go down? Why didn't they stay up in the air? And all the time that you're doing either of these chunks, you're having the children to think about gravity, how it helps us. You can bring the book back that you got. I think this book, the Gravities book I see on Amazon, I think they run about $7. They're full color pictures, and you can go back and just say, well, let's think about at the end of this study on gravity. How does gravity help us? What would our world be like if we didn't have gravity? And also, you can culminate this with the idea of the children doing exercises and standing on one foot, and how exercise is affected by gravity. And so at the end of this, I recommend, and this is just my own personal suggestion, but I think the science unit on gravity could run 2 weeks or 3. I just think that there's so many things that you can think about expanding this. It may be too long, but again, think about, if you haven't done anything with gravity this year, when you start your spring time events in your classroom, think about doing something with gravity. It's pretty fun. Technology covers the span in early childhood, a microscope, a tablet, can be used. The reason why the tablets are being used in science now, and you probably may have used these yourself, is it's got a camera. And there's a teacher in New Jersey who has a tablet like this, and she takes her children outside, and she has tablets, and they share, of course, because not every child has a tablet, but she has them to record things in nature about how the environment is changing between season to season. She has the children to actually look for certain kinds of things that might be crawling on the ground. Let's take a picture. Let's record that, because that's what scientists do. They look for evidence. They keep records. And so also digital cameras good for that. Of course, I don't know about children having a digital camera, but this is just some other examples of people how STEM and early childhood technology is being defined. This is a magnifier. This is a pretty cool magnifier because it's on these legs, and it's got a real good high intensity to it. Of course, there's the hand magnifiers. All of these are considered technological tools. Anything to help the scientists do their job classifies as technology. So this is just on the right-hand side, you see a set of beakers, and the idea we wear goggles when we're working with our tools to try to help us with our job, and we want to make sure we stay safe. Engineering to me is really fun. And, I wanted to tell you, I know my presentation, I don't have a lot of time today, but if you email me and you want other ideas, I can certainly give you some other tips that are not a part of this presentation. What I try to do is pull out maybe some ones that I thought might be a new adventure for you in your classroom. So I'm happy to stay in contact with you if you would like. Robotics. Have you heard the word robotics lately? It's everywhere. I took my grandchildren here in Houston. They have a big convention center, and they had a Legos. I don't know, it's a show. And I was shocked at how many things you can make out of Legos. They had things that are 8 foot tall. And so, and they had a section there about robotics and Legos. And I was curious about that and how children can take Legos to construct robots and other kinds of things. So I thought maybe today we'd spend a little time talking about robotics. Again, I believe in the integrated model. There are some really cool books on robots out there. And again, I don't want to, they're very available. They're very inexpensive. They're color. I believe that this is a good way to start a unit in your STEM center with a read aloud book. It motivates the children, has lots of discussion with them. You can certainly develop vocabulary by looking at the pictures in the book, just like you did with the Gravity book. I like the idea of robots written on a card for letter recognition as a way to reinforce that these letters make up these really important words in science too. After you do the read aloud, I think it'd be nice for the children to make their own robot just without construction paper, pipe cleaner, different kinds of tools, art materials that you have in the classroom. Maybe they could paint one. It's a 2D kind of creation that you want them to make. Name your robot. What does your robot do? How can it help other people? And after they name their robot and they talk about what their robot can do to help others, then I would maybe do some sinification and write it underneath their picture if they would think that would be a good idea. And I would put them in the classroom so they could see the robot that they actually created based on story and discussion. The next thing I would do is I would ask them to construct a robot with things like Legos. There's some really nice materials out there now. There's some that are magnetic. There are some that snap together and you turn them and they create these really exciting robot-like features in them. I think it would be a good idea to have them talk about those new robots, robot number 2. Well, what does this robot do? How is it different than the robot that you made? And the idea that we're constructing or we're engineering things. And there is a product called Cubelets, and I'm going to show you what they look like. Children are enamored with these. It's a good way to show the different kinds of robots there are. In the books that you see on robots that are out, they do talk about robots as well as the different kinds. So, but this kind, the Cublet kind, is not in any book, and it's just new, and children just love it. And I'm going to show you a picture of that in just a sec. But a home connection, we like to involve our parents in our STEM work. And so we're talking about using recycled materials to make a robot at home for a robot parade in the classroom. So asking parents to use boxes and paper plates and foil and the things that they might have thrown away, paper cups or something, and instead of taking those things and trying to reuse it again and ask the children to create something like a hat or something to go over their chest or whatever they want to do to have a robot parade and then take pictures for everyone to see. Let me see. This right here was another activity for the robots where they actually were making some geometric shape stamps. This is the same teacher. The idea of teaching math related to geometry. The children were talking about what colors they were using, and I like the stamps because they're big knob stamps, and children with fine motor can really grip them well. But first, there was just a general recognition of shape, and then they were able to also make a robot with different shapes if they wanted to. I want to go back. There's the about robots. Here she is on the floor with some of the children, and there's a book that she's holding. And the children in this particular classroom had not a strong foundation, but they'd heard the word, they kind of had a clue of what it was. But after this work, they really had a clue of a sense of what robots do and how helpful they can be for us. Here are the cubelets I talked about. I hope that you can see them. They're in the middle of the table, and they're like little batteries, and they come in a box. And there's a little charger for them. And what the children do is they get to construct a robot out of cublets, and they're able to see, because these are like little cubes. That's why they're called cubelets. And they're little cubes that you can fit together, and they can create this robot that goes around, and they're able to see them move around, and it's exciting for them to see about this, and they can take the cubes apart and make another shape from it. And I don't know if you can see there, but these children are just really excited about it. The teacher actually spent some time talking about, well, what makes that little cube go? Again, a math word, cube, a 3D shape, right? So that's another way to integrate here. But, you know, what do you think is happening here? What makes it go? What happens if we pull it apart? What happens to our cubelets in? What makes the cublet stop? And so, again, those open-ended, rich questions with children excites them and helps build that background knowledge we were talking about that helps them whenever they start into kindergarten addressing Common Core and literacy and mathematics, because all this analyzing, all this predicting, all this drawing conclusions has great benefit for children, and we know that their brains can do it. This is another thing I did on engineering, an idea that I put forward to this teacher was, I'm an old reading teacher, so I always got to have a book. Found this book called The Birthday Box. And I thought about it, and you may not know this book, but it's really cute. And I got to thinking, well, can we do some engineering with construction with this? And based on this book, can we introduce a new word called volume? And talked about volume, and of course kids don't, I don't expect them to memorize the definition, but I'm going to give them experiences so that they understand what volume is. So far we have learned a lot of words just in our talk with gravity, our talk with the engineering thing that we did, with the ramps and float and sink and fast and slow and all those kinds of things. I hope you're seeing this big cadre of vocabulary coming through from these lessons that we're talking about. So the idea would be that this is a cardboard box that she got at a real expensive place, and the children, she folded this for the children because it's kind of difficult. She had this prepared. But what they're doing there, she had some packing that she had gotten. I don't know whether it's a package that she received, but the idea was that she had the children. She put an egg, a raw egg, inside a plastic bag, and she asked the children to pack the box and ask them if they pack the box safely, because we're thinking about we pack things for, FedEx, UPS, DHL pick up for us, and we send things to our friends on Christmas with the postal service. And the question is, well, does packing matter? So when we construct something, which is engineering, what kinds of things do we need to think about? So this young girl here is actually putting the egg inside. It's in a Ziploc bag. She's put it down there, and the children are trying to decide, will the egg break or no? So they have a prediction page there. You see it on the table with their pencil. They need to predict, smiley, yes, or no, or whatever. I don't know what she said, no, I don't know what kind of code she used. But they're predicting in advance. So she constructed the box. They're packing it based on how they would like to see it packed. Then they're going to predict, did the raw egg break? She takes it up, and she allows the children to throw the box around with the raw egg. Each person gets a throw. And at the very end, the children open up the box to see if the egg broke. Now, if it breaks, what do you think caused it to break? And if it didn't break, what do you think caused it not to break? So then, after that, she goes another step. She was able to find a pattern, just like for the airplane folding, on the internet, of making a cube, three-dimensional shapes. Again, Common Core, kindergarten, requires children to know 3D shapes. She's getting ready for Common Core through STEM. This is part of mathematics. See the integrated model here. I'm hoping you're getting that sense of that. So if you see there at the, right by her hand, you'll see a cube. The children, it was a flat piece. She has the children to fold, each one of them, fold their own box. So the little boy, I think his name is Sam, he folds one. The young lady next to him has her own box. And the ladies and gentlemen across around the table, I think it was 5 children in all, each fold their own box. Now, one little boy had difficulty folding on the line, which is okay, because fine motor development can be supported by this, by helping these children do this. So they get their box ready, and that is kind of like a white Play-Doh that you see there, and that's marker. What they've been asked to do is to create a surprise box for someone in their life that is very special for them. It's not a birthday box, but it is something that we want to give someone that is very special to us. And they're decorating it right now. They get to mold the Play-Doh the way they want it to be, and then they're actually painting it or coloring it the way they want to be for this person. And you see the little boy, his mouth is open there. That's Sam. He is actually telling the teacher who he is making his present for and why he's making it for her. Now, I remember very clearly he was making it for his mother. And he said, I'm making it for my mom because she picks me up every day. So when she got in the car, he had his little prize inside there. He gives her the box. It's taped shut. And he gets to tell his mom about how he made the cube, how he made this present for her, and again, building the empathy, the social emotional development. See, I didn't talk about that. We got children who are taking turns. They're listening to each other's ideas. They're accepting those. And here we are thinking about feelings for someone else who's been helpful for us, and we want to recognize that for them. I want to go back to the slide. Right there. I forgot to tell you, when she got the box, I suggested that she get one in a cardboard style of a rectangular prism. And when that is folded shut, that's what that is. I think that costs about 50 cents. And again, thinking about Common Core in later schools, kindergarten, I think it's first grade they learn rectangular prism. It's either kindergarten or first grade. I think it's first grade word. But again, building the foundation for what comes before, because we know their brains can do that. There we saw that one. I know our time is almost up, but I have to touch a math because that's the M in STEM. And here's what's important. And this is based on the Mathematics and Early Childhood report that was released in 2009 by the National Research Council. Children in preschool should have a large, rigorous curriculum with math, numeral recognition, sequence counting at least 1 to 20. They should be able to do patterning, sorting of objects, objects in a set, being able to make a set of 5, show me 5 objects to put together, show me 2 objects together. All this is manipulative, ladies and gentlemen, manipulative. We need to put into add and subtract in a set. Spatial thinking means above, below, the size, next, and then measurement with a ruler. When Jenny did the flying of the airplanes, the folded airplanes, they actually measured how far they went. And then she said, okay, put some muscle behind your airplane when you throw it. So they put some muscle. That means they just did it a little bit harder, and then they measured that. So what made the difference? Why did your airplane go this far this time and not this far next time? And measured it. Now, you've got 20 children in a classroom. And you've got to go, how can I do that? Well, I think taking them outside or even the classroom and just having them get behind each other and wait their turn, that's another thing we want the children to learn. Now, you're going to get a chance to do your airplane, but we've got to let our friends go first. And measuring, and with the ruler, say, oh, yours went this and yours went this, and then try muscle power and see if that makes a difference by having them use it, throw it just a little bit harder with their, we call it muscle power. But anyway, these are important. These are non-negotiable in preschool. It's part of STEM, and we have to think about what are we doing to address these in our classroom. Here's an example of spatial thinking. This is, again, a dog house that's constructed out of paper. He folded it, found a pattern for it. This is a little pet dog, and the teacher said, put your dog on the dog house. Put your dog beside the dog house. Put your dog in front of the dog house. Put your dog behind. This is spatial thinking. Very simply done, but it's very important. Leads to algebra. Here is sorting shapes by color. This is just a little map. The shape is at the top, and this young man is actually sorting by color, by shape. And there's a discussion going on here. Well, how many sides does a triangle have? How many sides does a rectangle have? How are they different? How are they same? Asking and comparing and contrasting. It's very important in that. And if you don't have to have a map to do that, the teacher just happened to have one. You could just have you could buy these shapes, these wooden shapes, very inexpensively, and they're like, I don't know, 50 that come in a thing. I don't remember. It's a lot. And you could have your children sitting around a table here, and you could just say, well, okay, let's sort your, and you have to model a bit with them, but let's put all the red things together, all the yellow things, but you don't want to tell them that, of course. You want to say, now let's look and see how they're alike. Let's put them together how they're alike. And like I said, you may have to get them started by modeling. And then after you sort by color, then I want you to have them sort by, put all the things that, all the objects have 3 sides together. Put all the objects that have 4 sides together. Have that constantly comparing, and this is developed in the sense of geometry in mathematics. Toddlers. STEM officially has not come into the toddler world yet. But that doesn't mean it's not a good opportunity for these children. What the literature is saying, that senses appealing to the senses of the children is real important. The 5 senses is something that really can lead to good opportunities for STEM development later on. But, however, there's some really nice things that are out there to help with mathematics. Here's one where, at the bottom, where they're sorting by number, and they're putting the objects that belong in front of the house. I think they don't actually go in the house, but they're sorting by number. That's also number recognition. That's also sorting. So there's 2 there for mathematics. Having children to do construction with blocks is part of engineering. Having them to construct a tower, construct a village, construct a house, and talk about that, talk about what goes inside there. All of this is very important. Block centers is very important for helping in the development of STEM for pre-K and on up. On the top left, you see a sorting object. This is just a sample, but you could do that with anything. Having children sort things and how they're alike, and then actually have them sort on things that are different. Thinking about that abstractly, alike and different, also leads into literacy too. So these 3 things are examples for STEM. I did go on, let me show it to you. I did find one presentation on the internet, my toddler friends, that is a very interesting presentation. It's from the University of Washington, there's the website below and it's very concrete. And my time is almost up here. I didn't show you, I didn't put all the slides in here. I just want to guide you to that site. And I think you'll be very happy the way that this professor is actually guiding you in the world of STEM for toddlers. I like it a lot. So my time is up, and I'm just thankful that you were able. I had to talk very fast. I'm very sorry. But I do want to stay in contact with you. If you have other questions or anything like that, this is just a taste. The world is your oyster here. I hope that you've got some information that's going to help you. And think about today, okay, now am I going to start with gravity, or am I going to start with engineering? What am I going to do for mathematics? I saw that list that Susan gave me. Which one do I need to think about doing next week with my children? And think about the minutes that you're spending per day with your children, and think about ways to expand that and use the integrated model as Dr. Katz told us. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much for tuning in with me today. I really appreciate it.
Susan, we have time for probably one question that has come in, and just kind of scanning through them. One thing that people are interested in learning is some of the activities that you showed. Do you have a time frame for those activities? Were they one time? Were, like when you talked about building the robots, was this something that was done for short periods of time over multiple days?
Yes.
Speak to that a little bit.
Yes, and you know what? The reason why it's really hard for me to say a time frame, because each class is different. The background and the experiences of the children are different. Here's what I recommend. I think if you start a STEM center, like if you have centers for 20 minutes, 20 minutes, I'm not sure what are 45 minutes. I believe that children should be able to, if you have like 5 or 4 children go to that center, I think that their interest level with the cublets will stay about 10 minutes, 15 for that one period. Now they're going to want to come back and look at it again because they're so intriguing. So I would start out maybe at a 15-minute time and then try to expand it. And once you show the children the activity that you want them to do, and they're able to do it independently, then I think you can extend your time. But I believe that the children, no more than 5 children should be able to work on these activities I showed you at one time, except for the bubble blowing or the airplane, when they can be outside and you can kind of group them together.
Great, thank you, Susan. Our time here is almost up. So I would like to thank you, Susan, for sharing your expertise and insights and research. There's obviously just a lot of different ways that people can approach STEM and incorporate STEM into their learning environment. So thank you. I also just wanted to let everybody know, soon you will receive a brief survey that we would appreciate if you would give us some feedback on today's session, and if you have any ideas of other topics you would like us to cover in the future, we would appreciate hearing that as well. Tomorrow, everyone who attended will receive a certificate of attendance, and next week we will be sending out an email that will have a link to this webcast. It will also have a Q&A summary for all the questions that came in today that we did not have time to address, and then there will also be related resources that we will post with the webinar, so watch your inboxes for that. Also, just wanted to let everybody know that in April we're going to continue with a webinar on the focusing on STEM. However, we're going to age up a bit, and our program will talk about school-age youth, and that program is going to be on April 16th at 1 p.m. Central Time, and our presenter is Amy Kester. She is the Youth and Family Program Coordinator at Skokie Public Library. And that webinar is entitled STEAM and the Maker Mentality for School-Age Youth. I would also like to just invite everybody to consider bookmarking the ideas.demco.com site, and that is where you will find all of our archived webinars, and they're available to watch on demand. And then there's also a wide variety of articles and blog posts and other resources that may be of interest to you, because we do have a wide variety of topics there. So again, we thank you for joining us today, and hope that you found some great ideas and things to consider as you incorporate STEM into your early learning environments. Have a wonderful afternoon.